some of the stuff that we talk to, some might consider a little on the woo-woo side. And one of the areas that this can sometimes come up is the idea of rituals. But in reality, there's actually a lot of concrete things that happen, and maybe it's a little bit of a woo-woo name for something that's already happening in every organization. So I was wondering how you can explain how we think about rituals and how they contribute to company culture and company success.
Right. Another word for rituals is habit. Another word would be, the Tuesday meeting that we go to every week. There are a lot of things that we already naturally do within an organization, and we do it again and again. And that really, in the most basic sense, is what a ritual is. I think that where the strength of rituals comes in, the way that we talk about it in Lead Together, is that as we're building a culture and helping a culture flourish and grow, that there are certain behaviors, habits that we want to build and instill into an organization, because it's a choice of how we want our organization to function. And I think we can all think of times where there was a great practice, somebody suggested we should do this, and it was done once and never repeated again, even though maybe it went well, or maybe it just needed a little tweak. And so the idea of ritual is to find those things that are strengthening and bringing energy to the organization, that are helping guide the organization, and figuring out how can we ensure that those things continue again and again. And some of those ideas could be quite woo-woo, and there are a lot of really neat examples of what different companies have come up with. And some of them are just very practical. And in both senses, it is what brings, that is the culture. Really, if you think about what is culture, culture is those things that get repeated in an organization and really build the foundation of who the team is, what it stands for, how it operates. And so to make it more practical, I'd love, Susan, I always think of you when I think rituals, because you've shared some pretty fun ones, some pretty wacky ones, and I'd love to hear a couple of examples from you.
Oh, I don't know if I can remember any of the wacky ones. But yeah, I mean, thinking about rituals, I was considering for myself, when you offer that habits and rituals are interchangeable. When I think of a ritual, I think of something that's more maybe a little bit more intentional and thought about, whereas maybe habit is something that's just more reflexive or reactive.
Fair.
So maybe that's just another way to think of it. But the rituals also have different cadences, right? So the most famous one is the check-in, right? The idea that before we get going on the topic that we need to get going on, we're just checking in with each other, just bringing those relational elements into the field so that we can see them and we can use them as additional data before we start on the work that we're trying to do. And, when you're mentioning woo-woo, for some organizations, even the idea of just taking a moment and say, how you going, is super vulnerable and woo-woo. But in my experience, if I had to choose one that's the most powerful and the most, has changed the way that it feels for me to be in teams and to do work together, it would definitely be the check-in. Many teams do retrospectives after a work project of some description, to acknowledge what felt really good, spot what was missing, and make action-oriented decisions on how we might want to change our approach the next time. We in greater than every year, we do a ritual called stepping in. And this is because we're a decentralized team all over the world. What it looks like basically is just a mural with a little cartoon of a fire in the middle. We all choose an icon or an image or an avatar that represents us. And we step as close to the fire as we're feeling for that season. And the closer you are to the fire, to the middle, the both the warmer you get and the more you're responsible for attending the fire and being more responsible for what's happening in the core and for the whole. Another ritual, again, can in an organization can be offsites or intentional moments where we come together and concentrate on building our relationships. And within those rituals, there can be additional rituals like telling the story of the organization, having open space, having shared meals, right? So rituals are on a huge continuum. And all I can say is that pay attention to what works for you, because not everything will, and not everything will forever. And Travis, I know you've got some examples of when we talk about or think about rituals that are no longer serving. Yeah, what have you seen there?
Yeah, thanks. I see a lot of things, and I think it is to build on the difference you were talking about from habit versus ritual, right? When we talk about ritual, we're talking about things that are symbolic and meaningful and also require full engagement, right? They're typically anchored in celebration and they bring that sense of purpose and belonging, all key elements of ritual. And when rituals go poorly, it's because they slip away from some of those elements. I think the most common is the meetings that are there on the calendar because we were doing it for a while. And chances are it was really useful for a while. That's why it became a repeated meeting. But if it doesn't require our full engagement, and it's not meaningful and it's not building our story, then kill it. One of the other things that the Ready does early in their engagements that I think is a great one is come and just get rid of all meetings for a week and see which ones the team misses, and put those back and leave the ones that people aren't missing off. That can often be ones that everybody thought other people were concerned about but aren't. The all hands often gets at least transformed, if not completely stricken, because it can actually just be a proxy for people telling things that they already were going to say in other meetings to these same group of people that care more and can actually do something about. Another one, like our favorite ritual, the check-in, can easily become stale if it doesn't have some intention and some interpersonal connection behind it. If it becomes a performative act where I say something, right? And that's where I think a lot of check-ins started off with something well-meaning, and when I've seen them go stale and go wrong in organizations, is because people aren't really using that as a chance to see how they're doing personally in this moment and what they are bringing to the meeting, but they're just answering the same trite rehearsed message that is in mind. Oh, I'm fine, had a good weekend. What are you up to this weekend? Maybe that's personally connecting for people, maybe it's not. And it should be worth examining that, because rituals that are stale and old aren't serving anybody in any way.